Welcome to Crimson Clues, where shadows hide secrets and silence reveals the truth. Every story is a puzzle, and every clue takes you closer to the answer. Subscribe now, join the hunt, and let the mystery begin. Chapter 1. The Haunted Railway. The platform at Tangier Station pulsed with an unusual intensity that evening. Not the usual bustle of travellers, but something quieter and more fervent. I spotted it the moment Poirot and I stepped out of our car, our luggage trailing behind in the hands of two porters who exchanged glances that I couldn't quite decipher. We had travelled from London on the invitation of the Moroccan Archaeological Society, which was holding an international conference in Marrakesh. Poirot, whose renown had spread to North African intellectual circles, had been invited to give the keynote presentation on the use of methodical reasoning to solve historical mysteries. The Society's president, a professor named Al-Mansouri, whom Poirot had supported in discovering stolen antiques 3 years before, had been particularly persistent. As Poirot's companion and case reporter, I had naturally accompanied him, eager to escape the drab London winter for the warmth of Morocco. The ferry journey to Tangier had been enjoyable enough, and we had anticipated the romance of crossing the desert by rail. However, the mood on this platform suggested we had wandered into something less romantic than expected. "Poh, old fellow, have you seen that?" My companion looked at the platform with half-closed eyes, his egg-shaped head angled at the exact angle I'd come to identify as serious concentration disguised as casual interest. "Isn't it true that the porter makes a sign against evil? Very fascinating." A woman in a dark travel coat hurried past us, clutching her handbag as if it held the crown jewels. She threw a glimpse at the waiting train, the midnight express to Marrakesh, and I noticed her lips move in what could have been prayer. "These villagers are a superstitious lot," I murmured, but Poirot's finger lifted to stroke his magnificent moustache, a move that always preceded some observation I had completely missed. "Perhaps monemy, or maybe they have knowledge that we don't." The conductor appeared beside us, a lean man with the weathered face of someone who had spent decades on the railroad. His nameplate read Jacques Merrier. "The compartments are ready, gentlemen. Numbers 12 and 14. His tone radiated the warmth of a January wind off the channel. Poirot, ever the polite continental, delivered our tickets with a slight bow, but Merrier only glanced at them before turning on his heel. "Charming fellow," I murmured. We boarded the train, and I was shocked by how empty it was. The initial carriages only had a few occupants, perhaps a dozen, although I expected 40. The Midnight Express was regarded as one of the best routes through Morocco, yet the leather seats remained unfilled. The dining vehicle resounded with absence. Our compartments were reasonably comfy. I gathered my belongings and joined Poirot in the corridor, where he stood gazing through the window at the station. The station clock indicated 9. In 30 minutes we'd leave. "I believe you're attending an archaeological conference in Marrakesh." A sophisticated and pleasant voice captured our attention. The speaker was a remarkable gentleman of around 52 years old, with iron-grey hair and a face that suggested intelligence and kindness. He wore a well-cut suit, somewhat rumpled from travel, and handled himself with the ease of a man used to moving in high society. "I am Hercule Poirot, and sure I have that honor. You're also heading to Marrakesh. Cyril Montrose." The gentleman offered his hand. "I'm afraid I'm a publisher, rather than an archaeologist, despite having produced numerous wonderful volumes on Moroccan antiquities. I'm on a really depressing business trip. Octavia Wentworth, one of my favorite authors, is on board this train. Perhaps you've heard of her, but the novelist is undoubtedly the most distinguished." Montrose's expression clouded. "I'm sad to say that she's extremely ill. Cancer is terminal. She insisted on making the journey. I wanted to see Marrakesh one last time, but between you and me, I'm afraid she's not strong enough." Her physician and nurse are with her, of course, and her daughter suddenly joined us at our final trip. He spoke with obvious affection, and I found myself warming to him. His demeanor conveyed genuine care, which earned him credit. "A challenging circumstance," Poirot muttered. "She's asleep now. You understand about the morphine, right? Dr. Stratford controls her pain beautifully, but the dosage is necessary." He trailed off and shook his head. "Forgive me. One does not burden outsiders with such problems. I only mention it because you may overhear conversations among the other passengers. Mrs. Wentworth can be fairly outspoken when the pain is acute. A whistling broke the darkness. The train lurched ahead, and we started our trek into the darkness. I retired early, exhausted from our travels. Sleep came soon with the soothing swaying of the carriage, and I dreamed of nothing in particular until a scream broke the silence. I was on my feet before I regained consciousness, fumbling for my dressing gown. The corridor shone with electric light. Passengers emerged from compartments in various states of undress, their faces pale, and their voices rising with uncertainty and panic. Poe stood at my elbow, completely dressed. I had no idea how he managed to move so quickly. Compartment 7, Hastings V. We pushed through the growing crowd. A woman in a nurse's outfit stood still outside an open door, her face the color of chalk. Beyond her, in the faint light of the compartment's bulb, I saw a figure lying motionless on the tiny bed. Poe walked past the nurse with authority, and I followed. A nice leather luggage bag, books scattered on the little table, and a silk shawl spread across a chair added to the compartment's opulence. But I kept my gaze riveted on the woman. She reclined as if asleep, her countenance placid and even serene. Grey hair framed a face that must have once been attractive. Her hands were folded over her chest. On the floor beside the bed, a syringe caught the light. Mrs. Wentworth. The nurse's voice was hardly audible. I came to check on her like I do every 2 hours. She has died. Footsteps echoed along the corridor. A tall man pushed into the cabin, holding a black medical bag. His demeanor was serious, professional, yet I watched his eyes widen as he took in the situation. Good God, Octavia! He knelt alongside the bed, fingers searching for a pulse he could not find. After a moment he straightened. She's been dead for about 3 hours. Since midnight, possibly. Dr. Stratford. Poirot's voice was kind. Yes, I am her physician. I have been treating her for 6 months. He turned to face the nurse. Miss Chambers, when was the last time you checked on her? She was sleeping soundly at 11, doctor. At 90 I delivered the morphine. Yes, his voice tightened. But, he gestured to the syringe. This is not my scheduled dose. 2 more individuals emerged at the doorway. Cyril Montreux, the publisher we had seen earlier, clutched the door frame as if he might collapse. Behind him appeared a young woman of perhaps 28, lovely in a traveling suit of rich blue. Her expression remained composed, but her knuckles turned white as she grasped her handbag. Mother! The word came out flat, devoid of passion. Miss Wentworth. Dr. Stratford's professional approach reasserted itself. I am deeply sorry. She has passed away. The young woman, Evangeline Wentworth, I assumed, moved forward, but the doctor raised his hand. The cubicle must remain undisturbed. This is, he stopped, attempting to search for words. This was not a natural death. Montrose made a sound that was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. He fell into a chair in the passage and buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. A passenger behind us mumbled something in Arabic. Another voice rose in response. The curse. The train was cursed. 3 deaths in 6 months. We should not have boarded. Poirot scanned the scene with his amazing green eyes. There's nothing missing. The body position, the syringe, the open morphine case on the table, and the scratches around the little lock. He moved to the window and examined the latch, then the door handle, then returned to scrutinize the victim's serene face. Madame and Mur. His words broke through the growing terror. I am Poirot. Some of you may recognize my name. I must ask that no one depart this train. The body will be placed in the refrigerated storage compartment to preserve evidence, and I will learn the truth about what happened here this night. Maria, the conductor, appeared grim-faced. Poe drew him aside and spoke in quick French. The conductor nodded before disappearing. Dr. Stratford and the conductor returned minutes later, carrying a stretcher. As they prepared to transport Mrs. Wentworth's body, Poirot mentally recorded every detail. I could see it in his intense gaze. When they left, only 5 of us remained in the corridor. Poe and I, Dr. Stratford holding his black bag, Miss Chambers still shivering, and Cyril Montrose lying in his chair. Evangeline Wentworth stood out, her face a mask that I couldn't read. The train rumbled through the Moroccan night, delivering us to Marrakesh and a truth that I suspected would be considerably more complicated than any of us had anticipated. Chapter 2. The Tangled Web of Relations. Dawn crept across the Moroccan horizon, coloring the desert rose and gold. I hadn't slept since the discovery of Mrs. Wentworth's body. How could one sleep on a train while committing murder? Yes, it was. Poirot had made it apparent when we went to his compartment in the early hours. When we entered the dining car at 8, the atmosphere was thick enough to cut with a knife. The other passengers, who were not implicated in the catastrophe, huddled at the far end and spoke quietly. Our 4 suspects sat at separate tables. Each island of seclusion reveals much about their connections with one another. Poe examined the site with satisfaction, as if the stage had been set exactly to his specifications. He took a table near the center, ordered coffee and croissants, and motioned to the conductor. Monsieur Mercier is so kind as to invite Dr. Stratford to join us first. The conductor's attitude indicated that he'd rather wrestle a camel, but he obeyed. Within minutes, Dr. Malcolm Stratford slipped into the chair opposite Poirot, carefully placing his medical bag on the floor beside him. In the morning light, I could see the lines etched deep around his eyes and the grey lace generously through his dark hair. This was a man who had witnessed hardship and borne the consequences. At 9 p.m. yesterday, you gave Mrs. Wentworth morphine. Stratford's jaws tightened. I measured precisely as usual. 5 milligrams is enough to relieve her pain and allow her to sleep, but not enough to put her in danger. Is this recorded in your medical log? The doctor removed a leather-bound notepad from his jacket pocket. His hands, I saw, were as steady as a surgeon's when he opened it to the appropriate page. Poirot scrutinized the records, his finger running down the columns of clean script, most systematic, including the times, dosages, and even notes on her response to treatment. You last checked on her at 10:30. She was sleeping peacefully. Her respiration was steady, and her pulse was robust for a woman in her condition. Stratford's voice lowered. I should have checked again at midnight. That is my usual schedule. But you were in the observation vehicle, smoking. Yes, the word emerged, clipped defensively. Several other passengers may confirm this. I was there from 11 a.m. to around midnight. The burden of witnessing her diminish. I needed air. Poirot scribbled a note in his small pocket notebook. The morphine case. It displays evidence of interference. Does it not? The lock was scratched. Someone forced it open. Stratford leaned forward. But I had the key with me all evening. No one could have gotten into it without breaking in. But someone did, yes. The hush stretched between them. Stratford's serenity slipped, and I saw something underneath. Not guilt exactly, but a pain that extended beyond professional failure. You cared about Mrs. Wentworth. A patient is frequently cared for by more than just one physician. Stratford's face reddened. I had immense regard for her. 20 years of treating her, having talks and sharing hobbies. Yes, I cared for her like a buddy. Is this a crime? That may depend on the nature of the friendship. The doctor rose abruptly, scraping his chair against the floor. You are making an incorrect suggestion. I won't sit here and be insulted. Say, doctor, I have no suggestions. I only noticed that you react passionately when Mrs. Wentworth's name is mentioned. It is human. It is, in fact, really normal. Stratford stood for a little longer, before reluctantly taking his seat. He appeared to be exhausted from the fight. She was famous for her smart brains and quick wit. Even as she died, she kept her dignity and humor. The world has lost something valuable. Poirot dismissed him with a little bow, and Stratford returned to his single table. The conductor then introduced Miss Prudence Chambers. The nurse was a woman around 35 years old, with the efficiency of someone used to dealing with crises. Her uniform was neat despite the long night, and her hair was put back in a tight bun, yet her hands trembled as she accepted the tea Poirot had ordered for her. You found the body, Miss Chambers. I check on patients every 2 hours. It is common procedure at my level of care. Her voice was firm and professional. At 1:30, I went inside Mrs. Wentworth's cubicle. She was not breathing. I felt for a pulse. There was none. Her complexion was chilly. She had been deceased for quite some time. The syringe is on the floor. Have you touched it? No. I knew right away that something was wrong. The morphine case was open on the table, and Dr. Stratford keeps it locked. I immediately raised the alarm. Most commendable. How long had you been with Mrs. Wentworth? 3 months. Dr. Stratford engaged me when her illness worsened, and she required round-the-clock care, your prior employment. Her hands trembled more intensely. She laid down her mug with meticulous care. I worked at the St. Margaret's Hospital in London. Prior to then, there were several private instances around Europe. I guarantee you that your references are in order. But her eyes shifted away from Poirot's steady look, and I felt, as Poirot did, that she was hiding something. He let the stillness grow uncomfortable before beginning. Where were you between 9 and midnight in my compartment 9, only 2 doors down from Mrs. Wentworth? I was reading my prayer book and getting ready for bed. I said my evening prayers at 11:30 p.m. Have you heard anything unusual? Nothing. The train's movement muffles most sounds. And you were alone the whole time? Yes, Poirot thanked her, and she fled with obvious relief. I watched her go back to her table and bury her face in her hands. She's lying about something, Poirot, may we? Is she lying about murder or something else entirely? That's the question, mon ami. Evangeline Wentworth came to our table without being summoned. She moved with an elegance that suggested riches and breeding, but her gaze carried a harshness I found disconcerting. I'm assuming you'll want to question me as well. Madame Wiesel, you boarded in Casablanca. Yesterday evening I learned that my mother was creating this Jo Ernie. I believed she halted and appeared to steel herself. I figured it was time to reconcile. We had been estranged for 5 years, a family conflict. My mother was not pleased with my engagement to a man she thought was beneath our social standing. She issued me an ultimatum, his or my relatives. I selected him. Evangeline's voice lacked emotion. The engagement ended 2 years ago. My mother never knew. Pride, you realize, kept me from returning. But yesterday you overcame your pride. She was dying. Despite our conflicts, she remained my mother. Most natural. And when did you intend to speak with her? I wrote a letter yesterday evening. I planned to slip it under her door to prepare her, but I never had the opportunity. By the time I summoned the fortitude, she had died. Her calmness was extraordinary. Maybe it's too spectacular. Most daughters would be emotional when contemplating their mother's murder. Evangeline exemplified cool control. You remained in your cabin the entire evening. Writing the letter. Yes, compartment 15, and you can prove it. No, I was alone. Poirot examined her face, and I wondered what he saw there. After a little moment he cocked his head, and she returned to her seat with the same effortless elegance. Finally, Cyril Montreux joined us. The publisher looked like he had aged a decade overnight. His eyes were red-rimmed and his face was drawn with anguish. I still can't believe it. Octavia was more than just an author to me. She was a buddy and an excellent minder. His voice broke, and he took out a handkerchief to dab his eyes. The gesture was so human, so genuine, that my misgivings about him vanished completely. You have known her for 15 years. I published her first work when Montreux and Sons was still struggling. She remained steadfast even when larger publishers came knocking. That type of loyalty, Mr. Poirot, is unique in this profession. She was now working on a new novel. Her masterpiece. Montreux's face brightened despite his anguish. The best piece she had ever written. We were planning to publish it in the spring, but now he shook his head. This will be her final project. The literary community will mourn. And your business is successful. We've recently faced obstacles. Publishing is a tricky business these days, but Octavia's novels have always sold well. Her new book would have been amazing. His candor struck me. Most men would conceal their financial issues, but Montreux openly confessed his. Last evening you were in the club car. Yes, between 10 a.m. and midnight. I was checking publication contracts and talking literature with fellow travelers. There was an old couple, the Thompsons, and a Manchester-based businessman. They can all attest I was present. You didn't check on Mrs. Wentworth. Montreux's eyes filled with fresh tears. I should have. God assist me. I should have. But Dr. Stratford stated she needed to rest, and that the morphine would help her sleep all night. I believed there would be time in the morning to talk about the manuscript improvements she wanted to make. He buried his face in his hands, sobbing from the depths of his being. Poirot waited till the publisher had composed himself before dismissing him with friendly remarks. We watched Montreux return to his table, a broken guy mourning a friend. So Hastings, what are your impressions? I considered the 4 suspects. The daughter is quite cold. No normal individual would be so indifferent to their mother's death, and the nurse is certainly hiding something. You observed how she responded when you asked for her references. The doctor is also a publisher. Stratford is dedicated to her memory, although his timeline does not correspond to the conductor's rounds. Did you notice that in his log? Regarding Montrose, I shook my head. Poirot, the man's anguish is genuine, and his alibi is unshakable. Poirot brushed his moustache, his gaze unfocused. The psychology of murder, Hastings, is not always as it seems, but come on, we have a lot of work to do. The train rolled on across the desert, and with each passing mile I felt the weight of the mystery grow. Chapter 3. Secrets in Sleeping Cars. The desert extended eternally beyond the train's windows, sand and rock beneath a blue sky that hurts to look upon. Poirot had spent the morning doing an inspection of the physical evidence, which meant I had watched him use a magnifying glass to examine every inch of Mrs. Wentworth's old chamber, while providing a running commentary in French that I only partly understood. As afternoon heat shimmered across the countryside, he stated that we would go to the chilled storage chamber where the body was kept. The conductor led us through the train's service sections, past the kitchen where cooks cooked lunch, and into small passages that passengers never saw. Despite the hot desert weather outside, the storage box made me shiver. Mrs. Wentworth lay on a handmade beer mat covered with a white sheet. Poirot pulled back the covering with reverence. In death, Octavia Wentworth's face was so calm that it looked inconceivable that she had been slain. No struggle, no fear, only endless peace. Hastings, look at the needle mark on her arm. Here you see something fresh, produced within hours of death. I leaned in. The puncture was hardly noticeable, just a dot of damaged skin. At 9, Dr. Stratford delivered the morphine. However, she died at around 11:30, implying that the deadly amount was administered closer to her time of death. Then someone entered her cubicle and injected her after the doctor's prescribed dose. It appears so. Poe studied her hands, fingernails, and the way her hair fell on the pillar, but there was no indication of struggle. Either she was already profoundly unconscious from the first dose, or she knew and trusted her murderer. We returned to the passenger areas while lunch was being served. However, Poirot was uninterested in food. He sought access to each suspect's compartment, and Méliès, with evident hesitation, handed over the master key. Miss Chambers' chamber. Number 9 was austere, with a single carefully packed travel case and a nurse's outfit hanging in the little wardrobe. A well-used prayer book was on the table next her bed. Poe opened it with her delicate fingertips. Pressed flowers dropped from between the pages. Dozens of them, roses, lilies, and forget-me-nots, each labeled with a date and location. Paris 1923, Rome 1924, Vienna 1925, a trail of hospital and private cases around Europe. Miss Chambers is a sentimental woman, but beneath the prayer book, a letter was folded small and slipped beneath the leather cover. Poe raised his eyebrows as he unfolded it in red. What is it? A letter of dismissal from St. Margaret's Hospital in London, dated 8 months prior. It refers to unsuitable behavior and inappropriate interpersonal ties. Most interestingly, he mentally captured the situation before replacing it exactly as we found it. Dr. Stratford's compartment 6 revealed a different story. Medical texts lined the narrow shelf, with pathology and cancer publications packed beside them. His medical bag was open on the chair, tools sparkling, but nestled inside a copy of the Lancet, Poirot uncovered a photograph. Octavia Wentworth, younger and more colorful, is laughing at something beyond the camera's frame. On the back, in a woman's flowing script to Malcolm, who sees me for who I truly am with affection. Oh, the good doctor complains excessively about the professional aspect of their connection. I believe Evangeline Wentworth occupied compartment 15. Her possessions spoke of luxury, including fine luggage, silk gowns, and jewelry meticulously wrapped in velvet pouches. The bundle of letters recovered in her hat box, however, proved to be the most telling. Evangeline's hand held each letter sent to her mother. Nothing had been sent. Poe scanned through them, his face expressionless, before selecting one and reading aloud. You kicked me out for choosing love over money. However, your parents arranged your marriage to your father for financial reasons. You created stories about passionate romance, yet denied me mine. I will never tolerate such hypocrisy. I noticed that they were angry. Mon ami, you are deeply angry and upset. Angry and hurt. A formidable combo. The major surprise, however, was contained in the final letter, dated 3 days previously. Poe read it discreetly before passing it to me. The letter began with wrath, charges of cruelty, desertion, and a mother's inability to love her own kid, but concluded with desperation. I'm coming to you on the train. We will converse and you will hear me, whether you want to or not. I deserve the inheritance you took from me. I deserve what is rightfully mine. She knew about the will. I took a breath. She knew her mother had disinherited her. It would appear so. And 3 days later, she takes the train in Casablanca. Isn't this the most convenient timing? We left Evangeline's compartment and went to number 12, where Cyril Montreux had set up what amounted to a traveling office. Manuscripts and contracts covered every surface. Editorial notes were written in red ink on each page. A portable typewriter sat on the small desk, with a half-finished letter still rolling in its carriage. Poirot read Evangeline a letter of condolence, expressing condolences and offering to ensure her mother's final novel received the recognition it deserved. Compassionate and considerate, the words of a man who was very concerned about his author's legacy. But beneath the writings, in a sealed suitcase whose latch could be picked with humiliating ease, we discovered something altogether different. Financial data, letters from creditors and bank statements demonstrate that Montrose and Son Publishing was not just struggling, but drowning. Poirot, perusing the documents, mumbled, 30,000 in debt. The bank is threatening foreclosure. Creditors demand payment. However, there was more. Contracts with newspapers and magazines, each dated 2 weeks before Mrs. Wentworth's death. She has exclusive serialization rights to her final novel. Foreign publication deals and film rights talks are all predicated on one thing: publication after the author's death. He planned all of this before she died. It appears so. Of course, she was terminal. Her death was inevitable. Perhaps he was simply preparing for a sad but certain future. But I could hear the skepticism in Poirot's voice. The contracts were too numerous and too meticulously planned. This was a man who had prepared for every possibility. Poirot's attention was drawn to the fountain pen on the desk, which was gorgeous and expensive, with Montrose's initials engraved on the clip. He studied it momentarily, before replacing it exactly where it had been. "What is it, Poe? Did you find something?" "Perhaps, maybe not. Come on, we have one more individual to interview." We discovered Louis Gear in the engine car, a small room filled with heat, noise, and the odor of cold smoke. When we entered, the driver hardly looked at us, his focus on the controls. "Mougier, we have questions regarding what happened on this train." "I drive the train. That is all I know." His French was harsh and clipped. He was uninterested in conversing. The deaths in the last 6 months include a businessman, an elderly guy, and a woman who fell from the observation platform. "You were driving every time." "I drive every run. This is my route, and you've noticed that the quantity of passengers is falling." For the first time, something sparked in Garnier's eyes. Not guilty, but satisfied. Fewer passengers means less noise and trouble. "I prefer it." "You prefer empty trains?" "I prefer solitude." Poirot studied the man. This misanthrope lives at the heart of a contraption meant to bring people together. Stories regarding the curse. They began following the first death. Nespa are superstitious fools. They perceive patterns when none exist. But when his fists clenched on the controls, I knew Poirot had hit the nail on the head. We left Garnier to his engines and went back to Poirot's chamber. My friend took his seat and steepled his fingers beneath his chin, a posture I knew as intense contemplation. Hastings has 4 suspects, each with their own set of secrets and opportunities, but only one has a perfect alibi. I remembered Montrose in the club vehicle, which was witnessed by several people. The publisher couldn't have done it. He was never alone, was he? 3 witnesses confirm it. They corroborate his presence between 10 Naras and midnight. But Mrs. Wentworth died at 11:30, and the morphine had been tampered with. He paused to review his notes. The conductor made his rounds at 8:45. Mrs. Wentworth was alive and content. At 9 o'clock, Dr. Stratford administered his medication. She had died by 11:30. So when was the deadly dose administered? That, mon ami, is the fundamental question. Through the window, I saw the desert give way to scrubland, the first indication that we were reaching Marrakesh. Tomorrow morning we'd arrive, and the Moroccan police would take over the inquiry. Tonight was our last chance to learn the truth. Poirot rose and smoothed his jacket. "Come on. We have one more piece of evidence to analyze." "What is that?" "The morphine case and the marks around the lock. For I'm beginning to suspect, Hastings, that nothing in this case is entirely as it appears." Chapter 4. The gathering storm. As twilight fell across the desert, the dining car glittered beneath the glow of electric lights. White tablecloths and crystal glasses provide the image of civilization rushing through the woods. Poirot had set the table with remarkable perfection. 4 chairs for 4 suspects, arranged such that each could view the others while none could quickly flee. I took my usual position slightly behind my companion, notebook at the ready, though I suspected the drama about to unfold would burn itself into my memory without the need for written documentation. They arrived individually. Miss Chambers was the first to change out of her nurse's uniform for a modest grey dress, which did nothing to calm her fears. Dr. Stratford followed, his medical bag obviously missing and his mouth set as if ready for combat. Evangeline Wentworth entered with the same disturbing calm, taking her seat as if she were attending a social gathering rather than a murder inquiry. Finally, Cyril Montreux's grief-stricken face appeared to have aged a decade since morning. "Thank you for joining me." Poirot's speech reflected the formal formality that frequently accompanied his most devastating revelations. "We will have dinner and discuss murder." A waitress served harira soup with lentils and lamb, but hardly one touched their bowls. The train moved gently, and shadows played across faces, making it impossible to see actual expressions. "Miss Evangeline Wentworth." Poirot turned to her first. "You boarded the train with a letter in your possession. A letter packed with hate towards your mother." Her composure cracked slightly. "I was angry. Anyone would be. The letter discusses inheritance, money that you believed was rightfully yours. She cut me off without a dime. She left everything to charity, but I, her only child, received nothing. Is it so bad to want what is mine by birth? Not horrible, but it provides the most powerful motivation for murder." Evangeline's hand trembled as she reached for the water glass. "I desired reconciliation, not vengeance. That letter was written in rage, but I never sent it. I torched it in my compartment before we departed Casablanca." "Did you burn a letter in your compartment?" "Yes, inside the ashtray. I regretted writing it almost instantly." Poirot's eyes glittered. "However, the letter we discovered burned in your mother's compartment was written on the same paper by the same hand." "How interesting." Evangeline's face lost its color. "That is impossible. I never went into her compartment. I never saw her. I was writing a new letter, a kind one, when she died. A letter that no one has seen." "Isn't it convenient?" Dr. Stratford cleared his throat. "Mr. Poirot, you cannot believe Miss Wentworth is capable of such terrible act. She has no medical knowledge. Administering a deadly amount of morphine necessitates a grasp of doses, timing, and precisely the knowledge you have, Doctor." The physician's expression darkened. "I have explained my movements. I was in the observation vehicle from 11 a.m. to around midnight. This is something that multiple passengers can corroborate." "Can they?" Poe consulted his notebook. At 11:15, the Thompsons retired. The Manchester businessman went outside to smoke around 11:20 and did not return for 30 minutes. "You were alone for a brief period of time, Doctor." "That does not imply I went to Octavia's compartment. Nonetheless, the conductor noticed you in the passage near the sleeping compartments at exactly 11:25. Stratford's mouth opened and closed. "I was looking for the lavatory. There is a restroom in the observation car. Why walk the length of the train?" "I needed air." The smoke inside the observation vehicle was suffocating. "So you walked through the corridor that runs directly past compartment 7, where Mrs. Wentworth lay dying, to get some fresh air." The doctor's hands gripped against the table. "You are twisting everything. Yes, I cared about Octavia. Yes, I loved her. There, I said it. But that love would never let me harm her. I struggled every moment to keep her alive, to relieve her pain without hastening her death. Do you know what it's like to watch someone you love die by inches?" His voice broke and genuine grief filled his face. Miss Chambers leaned across the table to take his hand in hers. "Dr. Stratford is a good man. Whatever his feelings for Mrs. Wentworth, he would never break his oath as a doctor. Miss Chambers, you defend him extremely eloquently. Yet you have your own secrets, don't you?" The nurse removed her hand as if burnt. "I don't know what you mean. St. Margaret's Hospital. The dismissal was due to unbecoming conduct. An inappropriate relationship with someone related to your patient." Her face went scarlet. "It was a misunderstanding. I was innocent of any crime. So why did you fabricate your references?" Why didn't you tell Dr. Stratford the truth when he recruited you? Because no one would hire a nurse discharged from a reputable hospital. I needed the position. I needed to prove that I could still do my work well. Tears streamed down her face. Mrs. Wentworth was my patient. I cared for her, prayed for her, and did everything I could to help her piercing. I'd never harm her. Maybe not. However, you had access to the morphine case. You knew the dosages. You were familiar with the schedule. So did Dr. Stratford. Anyone who witnessed our procedure did the same. Poirot glanced to Montrose, who had remained mute during the exchanges, his face a mask of agony. And what about you, Mr. Montrose? You have been really quiet. The publisher looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. What is there to say? You have exposed everyone's secrets and flaws. Will you disclose mine as well? Your publishing house is about to go bankrupt. $30,000 in debt. Creditors want payment within a month. Yes. The word appeared empty, defeated. I have made poor business decisions. The market has changed, and I failed to move with it. Octavia knew this. She was contemplating a loan. Perhaps she was considering submitting her works to a more stable publication. Montrose's face wrinkled. She wouldn't do that. She was loyal. She realized that her new novel could save my house. The attention surrounding her death, as awful as it is, will ensure high sales. The serialization rights alone will satisfy the majority of my debts. It's convenient that you established those rights before she died. She was terminal. Her death was inevitable. Was I meant to let my business fail while waiting for the sad but inevitable end? He looked around the table, trying to understand. She was my friend. Her death destroys me. But certainly I planned for the commercial ramifications. Is this so wrong? It presents the most persuasive reason. This also applies to the daughter's inheritance. Montrose's voice soared. As does the doctor's forbidden love. As does the nurse's concealed scandal. We all have reasons, right? We all profited by Octavia's death. But I was in a club car surrounded by witnesses. I've never left. I could not have given her morphine. What about the club car? Yes, alongside the Thompsons and the Manchester businessman. Everyone please confirm your presence from 10 a.m. until midnight. Exactly. So whatever happened to Octavia, I had no say in it. Mr. Poirot, I may be a failed businessman, but I am not a killer. The passion in his speech echoed across the dining car. Despite my background as a human nature watcher, I felt affected. This was a genuine man suffering while defending himself against ridiculous accusations. Poirot slumped back in his chair, his fingers tucked beneath his chin. I see. So we've got 4 suspects. The daughter's fury and her purpose for inheritance. The doctor has a forbidden love and convenient holes in his alibi. The nurse has her secrets and access to the medication. And the publisher, with his debts and advanced plans for a profitable suicide. He paused, his emerald eyes sweeping over each face in turn. But there is something else, isn't there? Something unites all of these deaths. Not just Mrs. Wentworth's, but the others, the businessmen, the woman on the viewing platform, and the old man. A curse, Miss Chambers whispered. Everyone claims the train is cursed. Curses, Miss Chambers, do not exist. But plots or schemes are quite real. Evangeline leaned forwards. What are you saying? I am suggesting that when we arrive in Marrakesh tomorrow morning, I will collect everyone, passengers, crew, and suspects, and reveal 2 truths. The truth about who killed Octavia Wentworth, as well as what has happened on this train during the last 6 months. He stood, adjusting his jacket with meticulous movements. I advise that you all retire to your compartments. Rest if you can, because tomorrow the story ends and reality must be confronted. They slowly separated, each retreating into their own secret thoughts and anxieties. I stayed behind with Poirot as the dining car emptied. You understand, don't you? You've solved it. I know a lot of stuff, Hastings. I am aware that looks deceive. I understand that the obvious suspect is rarely the guilty party. And I understand that murder can wear a mask of mercy to cover the face of greed. But which person did it? Poirot smiled. That slight contented smile, I had learnt, meant he had all the cards. Tomorrow, mon ami. Tomorrow you will witness how order arises from chaos, method reveals truth, and little grey cells prevail over falsehood. The train rocked through the darkness, transporting us to Marrakesh and a reckoning that would reveal secrets hidden beneath layers of anguish. Love and careful performance. Chapter 5 discusses the psychology of murder and myth. Morning approached, and the Atlas Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks tinged with gold. The train would arrive in Marrakesh within an hour. Poirot had requested that the dining car be cleaned of all furniture, except chairs arranged in a semicircle, which would serve as the stage for the concluding act of his inquiry. They assembled as summoned. Our 4 suspects sat in the front row, each keeping a careful distance from the others. Behind them sat the other passengers, the Thompsons, the Manchester businessman, and a French couple who had been silent during the ride. Louis Garnier stood apart, arms folded, and his expression revealed nothing. Maria, the conductor, hovered at the door, ready to notify the authorities as soon as we arrived. Poe scanned his audience with satisfaction. He appeared before them, immaculately dressed in his morning suit, his mustache perfectly waxed. "We've gathered to discuss death, or rather deaths, as there have been several on this train." A murmur echoed across the assembled passengers. The Thompsons gripped each other's hands. The businessman died of heart failure. 6 weeks have gone since the woman fell from the observation platform 3 months ago. The old gentleman was discovered dead at his birth a month ago. And now Mrs. Octavia Wentworth. 4 dead and 4 tragedies. "The curse," someone murmured. "There's no curse." Poirot's voice pierced through the growing terror. "There are no mystical forces at work on this train. There is only human nature, and one individual who learned how to use terror for his own benefit." All eyes were drawn to Louis Gier. The driver's countenance intensified, but he remained motionless. "Mr. Garnier, you are a man who despises others. The cacophony, the demands, the relentless incursion into your privacy. Nonetheless, you chose a vocation that puts you in daily touch with travelers. I drive the train. I do not entertain tourists." "No, but you resent them. So you devised a really clever idea. The businessman who died had a documented cardiac disease and died from natural causes. But you embellished his demise, whispering about odd sounds in the night and chilly patches in the corridor. The woman who had fallen was inebriated. The wine steward confirmed she'd finished the entire bottle. Again tragedy, but you turned it into mystery and omen." Gier clenched his jaw. Superstitious fools believed whatever they chose to believe. "You leaked reports to railway stations, local newspapers, and anyone who would listen, and bookings dropped, didn't they? Fewer passengers meant quieter journeys. It meant serenity. Is this a crime? No, however. It established an environment that would be most beneficial to others. Someone who needed death to appear normal, predictable, and part of a larger pattern." Poirot turned to confront the 4 suspects, his attention fixed on Evangeline. "Miss Wentworth, you wrote an angry letter to your mother, but the fury stemmed from hurt, years of separation, and a mother who prioritized pride over love. You boarded this train looking for peace, not vengeance." Evangeline's composure eventually crumbled. Tears ran down her face. "I never wanted her to die. I just wanted her to see me and acknowledge what she had done. The fortune was nothing compared to having my mother back. I believe you, and that is why you did not kill her." He turned to face Miss Chambers. "And you, Miss Chambers, you hid your dismissal from St. Margaret's, not because you had done something criminal, but because you had loved where you should not have, the husband of a patient, perhaps." The nurse's face wrinkled. "He sought me. I resisted for several months. My career was ruined in a single moment of weakness. Nonetheless, you showed great passion and skill in caring for Mrs. Wentworth. You are guilty of poor judgment, not murder." Dr. Stratford leaned forwards. "Then there was me. Is this what you are saying?" "No, Doctor. Your affection for Octavia Wentworth was genuine. Your timeline has gaps. Yes, but those periods were spent treating a child in the third-class carriages. I checked it with the conductor. You concealed your charity activities from your patient because she would have objected to you wasting time on individuals who could not pay." Stratford's shoulders relaxed with relief, but bewilderment spread throughout the throng. "Then who?" the Manchester businessman demanded. "Who killed her?" Poirot's attention fixed on Cyril Montreux. The publisher, who had been mute throughout, now met those green eyes steadily. "That was you, Mr. Montreux, you and you alone." Montreux's expression was one of puzzlement and anxiety. "Mr. Poirot, we've been through this before. I was in the club car from 10 a.m. to midnight. 3 persons can testify. They attest to your presence from 10 cars until midnight. However, the tampering took place at 8:45 p.m. at supper, before you formed your alibi. Dr. Stratford had prepared the 9 dose in advance, as was his custom. You were already familiar with this routine. The publisher's expression never changed. I was preparing for dinner in my compartment. Yes, you were alone, but the conductor spotted you in the passageway near compartment 7 at 8:45. I was going to dinner. The corridor connects to the dining car. It also goes by Octavia's chamber, where you paused, picked the lock on her morphine case with a tool you said you didn't have, and used a fountain pen adapted to hold liquid morphine. You injected more morphine into Dr. Stratford's pre-prepared syringe, which he would administer at 9 Wu. The nice doctor unknowingly administered the lethal dose himself. By the time Octavia died at the age of 11, you had set up your ideal alibi in the club car, surrounded by witnesses. That is ludicrous. Fountain pens cannot. Poirot removed 2 fountain pens from his pocket. Except for one feature, they are identical. The first carried Montrose's initials. The second, taken from the lavatory waste bin, contained traces of morphine in its hollow barrel. You had 2 pens. One stayed visible in your compartment, emphasizing your role as a dedicated publisher. The other you used to transfer and inject the morphine before discarding. You see, Miss Montrose, you studied medicine for 3 years before entering publishing, something you kept from everyone. Montrose's face lost its color. His sadness mask began to break. You intercepted Evangeline's letter in Casablanca and learnt she was going to join the train. Perfect time for your plan. You grabbed that angry letter, which she had written but never mailed, and placed it in Octavia's compartment, partially burned in her ashtray. This would ensure that suspicion rested on the estranged daughter. You planned the murder to coincide with her arrival, knowing that an estranged daughter with a threatening letter and a financial motive would be immediately suspected. You scraped the lock to indicate a forcible entrance. You staged the overdose to appear like mercy killing or suicide, and you provided an impenetrable alibi for the time of death. While the real manipulation took place hours earlier, this is guesswork. You have no proof. I have your financial documents, which show you're $30,000 in debt. I have the contracts you arranged before Octavia died, which were reliant on her death before publication. I have the postal clerk's testimony that you befriended him and got a letter addressed to Mrs. Wentworth, and I have morphine traces on your second fountain pen. Montrose stood there, his grief gone, replaced by cool calculating. His gaze darted to the door. He bolted. I moved faster than I imagined possible. Years of military training have dominated conscious thought. I apprehended him as he approached the observation platform door, tackling him to the ground, while he struggled and cursed. Other passengers hurried to assist, and within moments we had him bound with curtain ropes, his guise of sympathy removed to show nothing but avarice beneath. The train approached Marrakesh station, where Moroccan police waited on the platform to apprehend a murderer who had turned tragedy into profit, friendship into currency, and sadness into a life-changing performance. Epilogue: The Marrakesh Dawn. The train pulled into Marrakesh station as dawn illuminated the city in pink and caramel hues. Moroccan police officers boarded instantly, their uniforms standing out against the commotion of the platform beyond. They apprehended Cyril Montrose, who maintained a sullen silence as they brought him away. His act had ended. Only the truth remained. Octavia Wentworth's body followed on a stretcher, wrapped in white linen and heading for the city morgue, where professional examinations would corroborate everything Poirot had learned. Railway officials led Louis Garnier down the platform, not to prison but to dismissal. His plot had caused no direct harm to anyone, but his manipulation of fear had cost the railway firm dearly. Dr. Stratford stood on the platform and spoke softly with Miss Chambers. The early light exposed the tiredness on each of their features, as well as something else, a tenuous understanding born of shared experience. I meant all I stated regarding your competence. The doctor's voice carried to where Poirot and I were watching from the carriage window. When this is over and I've recovered from everything, I'll supply you with appropriate references. You deserve another opportunity. Miss Chambers patted her eyes with a handkerchief. Thank you, Doctor, that means more than you realize. Evangeline Wentworth remained alone, clutching a leather portfolio that held her mother's final work. Tears had etched tracks through her meticulously applied powder, leaving her face raw and human. She approached our window before leaving. Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, I wanted to thank you for discovering the truth and showing me that my mother's death was not my responsibility." Poirot bowed his head with customary deference. "What will you do now, mademoiselle?" "I'll make certain that my mother's novel reaches readers through an honest publisher. The funds will go toward establishing a cancer research foundation in her name. Perhaps something positive can come from this tragedy." She paused. "I wish I had sent the first letter, the kind one I intended to write. I'll have to live with the remorse. Regret is a heavy burden, but you wear it with grace." She smiled. Small, sorrowful, but real, she disappeared into the busy station. We were ensconced into our Marrakesh hotel after 3 days. The conference ended, and our responsibilities were performed. We sat on the patio overlooking the Medina, with mint tea steaming in beautiful glasses before us. The old and timeless call to prayer echoed across roofs. The market below was alive with spice merchants, carpet sellers, and the never-ending dance of commerce and community. I shattered the comforting silence between us. I confess that I suspected everyone but Montreux. His anguish appeared real. That mon ami was exactly his genius. Most murderers succeed by appearing too innocent and composed. Montreux understood human psychology. He displayed emotion without overreacting, cooperated without enthusiasm, and admitted his financial difficulties as if honesty demonstrated innocence. "But how did you learn to look for a second fountain pen?" Poirot sipped his tea, enjoying both the flavor and the explanation that would follow. "When we first found the dead, before Montreux established his alibi, I noticed new ink on his fingers. Later that morning, his fingers were clean, and his pen sat neatly on his desk. A man who carries such an expensive pen would not need a second one for daily use, unless it fulfilled a completely different purpose, and his medical training. His queries to Dr. Stratford were overly educated. He inquired about morphine absorption rates and post-mortem lividity, something a layperson would not think to ask. I looked into his background and discovered the abandoned medical studies. He had removed it from his public record, but university records hold all truths. I saw a merchant downstairs arrange pyramids of oranges, each piece carefully put. What bothers me is how well he fooled us. You too asked the doctor additional probing questions. Because the evidence led to the doctor, it was clear that someone had set it up that way. Hastings, the clever detective, glances in the opposite way when everyone else does, demonstrating the psychology of misdirection. And if you hadn't spotted the ink on his fingertips, there were other indicators. He presented Octavia's manuscript in full, as if he had just studied it to prepare his story, and the exclusive deals established before to her murder, which he accepted but portrayed as opportunistic rather than intentional. The fact that he knew Evangeline had boarded at Casablanca, despite the fact that she had told no one, was a minor element in and of itself, but when combined, it constituted a pattern. Poirot closed his eyes and listened to the call to prayer echoing around the ancient city. I knew he was cataloguing the case, keeping track of every detail, psychological insight, and lesson on human nature's proclivity for darkness disguised as light. He was the deadliest type of murderer, not the passionate killer who acts in wrath, nor the desperate killer who acts in terror, but the calculating killer who kills in cold blood and then acts humanely afterwards. Those are the people who sleep soundly after committing suicide, because they have convinced themselves and almost everyone else that they are incapable of such crimes. Will he hang in Morocco, France, or England? Wherever he stands trial, the evidence is overwhelming. Justice will be served. The sun rose higher, burning away the morning mist. A storyteller began his tale somewhere in the Medina below, his voice rising and falling in perfect time. Stories within stories. The truth is shrouded in fiction, the eternal human desire to comprehend the unexplained. Poirot Garnier's curse-related scheme had nothing to do with the murder. However, it produced the ideal environment for it. Life, mon ami, is filled with such coincidences. The killer did not create the myth, but rather resided within it. Both leveraged human belief to their advantage. One creates loneliness, while the other disguises avarice as mercy. So there are two secrets, not just one. Two mysteries and a single lesson. People see whatever they want to see. They believe whatever makes them feel comfortable. The small grey cells must see beyond comfort to truth, from appearance to actuality. A breeze wafted the fragrance of orange blossoms and spices from the market below. The midnight express to Marrakesh would mark another chapter in Poirot's renowned career, a story of myths and murders, of fictitious spirits and all too real avarice, a reminder that the most effective deceptions are perpetrated not with masks, but with the illusion of authenticity itself.